Motion for review of the magistrate's probable cause determination. Uh-oh. This is fun. Notice this one is filed in the Superior Court out of the state of Arizona. And notice she's talking about the magistrate's judge, the lower court judge, and the lower court judge's finding of probable cause. So this motion is coming out from our friend Brenna Larkin. And I just say that, I actually don't know her, but she's a great lawyer from what I can tell. Says that this is coming from her office out of Tumacacacori, Arizona. And yeah, I think this is a new case number. Is it a new case number? I think it is a new case number. Anyways, this is how I found it on public access with this number. So she submits this motion and it's signed here by Brenna Larkin, filed the 3rd day of March. That is a Friday, and it's a 12-pager. So basically what this means is she's saying, hey, Superior Court judges, which, I don't want to be sort of pejorative to justice court judges, but Superior Court judges are, they are the felony judges. Like that's what they do. They exist to handle felony criminal cases. Justice court judges do not. They do probable cause hearings and these types of determinations. But, in most cases, what they're handling are misdemeanors. That's why they are justice courts. The felony courts go over to Superior Court. So basically she's saying, look, I know this lower court judge did what he had to do. He determined that there was probable cause, but he didn't do a good job. I'm asking you to reconsider it, review it, and decide that there isn't enough here. And so we may see that in this case, the reason they're saving George Allen Kelly for last is because they may have oral arguments on this, and we'll see what the judge wants to do about it. It's still this one defendant. You see, sentencings take a long time.
File for post-conviction relief. If you want to know more about what that is, your lawyer will tell you. If you wish to file, you must file a written notice of your intent to do so within 90 days of today's date. Otherwise, you'll lose that right. And if you decide to file and if you cannot afford it, the court will pay the cost of that action, and that includes the cost of a lawyer and any documents or records or transcripts that are needed for that purpose. Now, in a moment, you're going to step forward here. You've got some documents to sign with the clerk right here. Then report down to adult probation on the first floor of this building. There, a probation officer will meet with you, or he or she will explain to you and go over all the terms and conditions of your probation again. Don't leave the building. Go immediately to adult probation. If you fail to do that, a warrant will issue for your arrest. Do you have any questions, sir?
No, the only question I got is my wife, she's going through.
All right, so we'll leave that out. Now, I was just trying to gauge who this was so we can see. Disposition hearings, that's a sentencing, I think is what they're doing right there is a sentencing. They're calling it disposition hearings. So those can take a while, as you can see, right? He's been up at the podium for about, 10 minutes now. So if you got a bunch of those, you might have change of pleas. These take forever too. If they're going to save George Allen Kelly to the end, could be a long wait for us. We'll have to see. But we'll go back through the motion because this is some good stuff. So we have Brenna Larkin, defense attorney for George Allen Kelly, writes the following. All right, Judge, hate to have to do this, but comes now the defendant by and through the undersigned attorney. We respectfully make this motion for you, the Superior Court, to review the magistrate's probable cause determination. They say this motion is being made pursuant to the Arizona Rules of Criminal Procedure, and here are the following facts. She writes, this case involves the defendant, George Allen Kelly, firing warning shots over the head of armed drug traffickers. We just heard from Brenna Larkin. This was the filing she dropped on Friday. This is what the judge said the government's going to respond to and that he needs to get transcripts about from the lower level court. He doesn't know when he's going to get them, but when he does, they'll set a date. Mr. Kelly was eating lunch and he first heard a shot fired and saw his horse running. Mr. Kelly and his wife both then observed numerous armed men carrying rifles in large backpacks running through the trees. So his wife will be able to testify to this, right? Mr. Kelly told his wife, honey, stay inside, stay quiet. There's armed men out there. Mr. Kelly called the Border Patrol. They have a ranch liaison for assistance. Then Mr. Kelly went to his back porch with his rifle in order to deter the drug traffickers from approaching his house. One of the members of the group pointed a rifle at Mr. Kelly, and Mr. Kelly responded by firing several warning shots over the head of the group. Mr. Kelly's shots were all fired well over the head of these people. And Mr. Kelly did not shoot anybody during this incident. The group of traffickers ran away through the desert, and Mr. Kelly called the ranch liaison for his assistance. He's calling twice. According to the ranch liaison, Mr. Kelly made a statement that was inconsistent with his previous report that these men were armed. According to the ranch liaison, Mr. Kelly stated that the people were too far away to tell if they were in fact armed. However, when the ranch liaison relayed this information to the Border Patrol dispatcher, somebody called Agent Tercey, the ranch liaison reported that Mr. Kelly stated that he could not tell whether the shots were fired close by or in the distance. The ranch liaison did not report to the Border Patrol dispatcher that Mr. Kelly stated the men were too far away to tell whether they were armed or not. So in other words, this is a new fact that got introduced into the evidence after the fact. Suddenly, this Border Patrol agent is saying that, oh no, he said it was too far. He couldn't see any of that stuff. When did he say that to you? When I talked to him previously? Okay, but when you reported what you talked to him about, you didn't include that in the report because you relayed that to the dispatcher, Agent Tercey. The dispatcher wrote it all down, and you didn't include that in your statement. In all other statements to law enforcement, Mr. Kelly consistently stated that the men were armed with rifles and carrying large backpacks. So do you see what they did? They just went in there digging around like prosecutors to find the one inconsistent statement, the one thing that's not like the others, even though everything else was consistent. And it may be that he was consistent in that statement as well, that this Border Patrol agent is just misremembering, if you want to be generous. Because when he actually called the Agent Tercey and reported it, that wasn't in there. That only Kelly said he couldn't tell whether the shots were close or far. Didn't say anything about armed or not, which is pretty critical in a self-defense case, isn't it? So either he's a terrible agent, or it never happened, or it did happen and he just didn't report it, which again would make him a terrible agent. So law enforcement responded to the area and they searched the area. Yeah, because Kelly called them. Law enforcement was not able to locate the men or anything else on Kelly's property. After documenting the incident, law enforcement then left. Now, later in the day, Mr. Kelly was going to his pasture to check on the horse, and his dogs located the body of a man near a mesquite tree. The body was over 100 yards away from Mr. Kelly's house. Shout out to our PowerPoint. This is what we're talking about. House, casings, body, 115 yards was the testimony. And other testimony said that the shooter from the victim, RAFG, was only 10 yards away, which would put the casings about 105 yards away from where they were actually found. Not very realistic. Doesn't look like good evidence. That body was of a man lying face down in possession of a camouflage backpack and a two-way radio. The presence of the radio indicated that this person was not a migrant, but instead a smuggler of some kind, whether of people or drugs or both. No drugs were discovered on the body. The body was later identified as a man named Gabriel. No drugs, no weapons discovered. And when Mr. Kelly found this body, he immediately called the Border Patrol ranch liaison to request assistance, somebody he's already talked to previously. Law enforcement responded to the area and they began investigating. Mr. Kelly was interviewed and law enforcement accused him of shooting Gabriel. They did. The one officer that we heard from at the preliminary hearing was very aggressive. You did it, didn't you? And then when he was talking to the other immigrants, he's oh, you didn't do anything, right? Oh, you're definitely not a drug dealer, right? Right? Good. Perfect. Mr. Kelly continued to deny that he had shot at anybody repeatedly. Law enforcement claimed that Mr. Kelly shooting at a person was the same thing as shooting over a person because it's more convenient for their fictional prosecution that way. And they described Mr. Kelly as, quote, changing his story because he said he shot, quote, over the people rather than at the people. So obviously he's the liar. He's the dishonest person. It's not the other people running around in camouflage, breaking and entering the United States border, and then breaking and entering his border, which is his private property. But the police are twisting themselves into pretzels to try to turn this into something. Such an egregious case. It's ridiculous. Mr. Kelly never admitted that he shot at any person at all. Never said that, but they changed his word over to at. Nevertheless, law enforcement conflated these terms because that's what they do. And they claimed in their statement of offense that Mr. Kelly had admitted to shooting at numerous subjects. You see how that works? One word. We talk about this all the time. Little minor marginal changes change everything. During Mr. Kelly's interview, he was told his statements did not add up. That one officer was beating him up over the head with his words. But he was not given any opportunity to hear or correct any possibly conflicting statement. Mr. Kelly was told that he needed to, quote, help himself out. You see that? Come on, buddy. Help yourself out here, right? Look, tell me what you did. I know they were on your property. We're going to get the ballistics. We're going to get forensics. It's all going to come back. It's going to be worse for you. So just tell me right now, help yourself out. You can do that by, quote, telling the truth. They said, you shot him, didn't you? Right there. You shot him, quotes. And he was told that law enforcement was going to do ballistics. Mr. Kelly was told that if the ballistics showed that the shot came from his gun, Mr. Kelly was going to be in trouble. It's like a scene from a bad Netflix movie. In spite of this pressure from law enforcement, who wanted this guy to be guilty, Mr. Kelly maintained that he did not shoot the individual found on the property. I didn't did it. I shot over them, not at them, idiots. Without doing any real forensic investigation at all, they just arrested him that day. Law enforcement decided to arrest Mr. Kelly and charge him with first-degree premeditated murder. Like the 73-year-old man was just running around hunting illegal immigrants on his property. I'm going to go out and shoot some migrants on my property. That's what they wanted to believe. That's what they started to create. Search warrants were then executed and shell casings were found on Mr. Kelly's property near his house, 100 yards away from the body. Consistent with Mr. Kelly's statements that he fired warning shots up into the air, 100-yard shot away from the porch of the house where the casings were is a difficult shot. And he was all sort of tucked back in a wash behind a mesquite tree, give or take. Mr. Kelly's rifle was also located. No bullet was found and therefore no ballistics were accomplished in this case. You see that? No bullet was found. So we're not going to get ballistics. What? So the bullet went through, is not recoverable, and there are not going to be ballistics in this case. This is going to be a wild case. They're going to continue to prosecute him. All right, let's keep reading before I throw something out the window. Upon Mr. Kelly's arrest, this case became highly publicized. The political climate regarding border issues is extremely volatile. You're kidding me. This case has garnered national interest as a result. The public and the political nature of this case has compromised the investigation, and the details of this case are widely known to the public at large. Everybody else is compromising it, okay? We're not compromising anything here. All right, we're doing nice, good work here. Under these circumstances, Brenna says, various people claiming to be witnesses to this event have come forward and made statements. Those witness statements, like the ones we heard from at the preliminary hearing, are highly suspicious. They're giving under dubious circumstances. They contradict each other, and they contradict the physical evidence in the case, including the horse who got shot, but apparently was not shot. What were they talking about? Two of them saw it. The first person to officially come forward was a person whose initials are RAFG. He was picked up by Border Patrol near Sonoyta for alien smuggling on February 8th. Remember, the date of this incident was January 30th. So Gabriel is on scene at illegally crossing into the United States, illegally crossing onto Mr. Kelly's property. He's shot and killed. They say by George Allen Kelly. We don't know by whom. 9 days later, on February 8th, he left right after the shooting happened. He's with a group of 8 to 10 guys. He's like, I'm out of here. Something went down. Somebody's shooting somebody. I'm out of here. But he was, at the time, right, we were told, or currently still told, he's just or at least his friend, the other person who he was with, DRR, the other migrant, they're saying that DRR was just a roofer, right? Just wanted to come work in the United States. Meanwhile, his buddy, who is a part of the same group, RAFG, he's picked up around the corner 9 days later on February 8th for alien smuggling. Under these circumstances, this person, RAFG, attempted to provide information about the homicide. He goes, oh crap, I'm caught now. I've got useful information. I've seen that story all over the headlines. Who's that guy? That rancher shot that other guy? Oh yeah, I'll tell you whatever you want. He claimed that Mr. Kelly just randomly started shooting at a group of unarmed migrants without warning. He claimed that Gabriel was the guide for the group and that he had approached the house to get water and that Mr. Kelly shot him at close range with a rifle. He said that. That was the 10-foot statement that we have in our PowerPoint. 10 feet. RAFG said that right there. He said it was like 10 yards away. He's like right here. And he said a horse got shot too. So you say, what? What horse are you talking about? RAFAG also claimed that Mr. Kelly shot a horse. He claimed that there was a house and that the body was shot near a gazebo with writing materials that were close to the body. Nobody knows what the heck he's talking about. He also claimed there was a white sedan at the house. This is a key witness. This is the victim of a crime, according to the government prosecutors there out of Santa Cruz. The second person to come forward was a person with initials DRR. He came forward after the family of the deceased person, Gabriel, located him and arranged for him to meet with Sheriff Hathaway and Detective Barba in Mexico. Okay, so 2 U.S. law enforcement officers went down into Nogales, Mexico to meet with the so-called victim of a crime, DRR, who was tracked down by Gabriel's family. And so they're investigating crimes for victims of other countries and prosecuting U.S. citizens. Just so you're clear on what happened here. Sheriff Hathaway and Detective Barba, they drove down into Nogales, Mexico, to meet with their victims of a crime, so-called, after they broke into the country and then into his property. And there's really no evidence that he shot them at all, other than their words. And their words are pretty bad because according to the evidence, there is no dead horse. There is no gazebo. There is no writing materials. And the casings were 115 yards away from the body, not 10 yards. So U.S. law enforcement goes down to Mexico, and the witness was apparently interviewed for about 40 minutes, but only 6 minutes of the interview were actually recorded. Can you believe that? Weird. So at the end of the interview, they're getting past all of the bad stuff, and they finally get on the same page, and they're like, okay, perfect. So now that that's all out of the way, let me hit the record button. Let me go ahead and press record. Okay. Okay, so now we're ready. Do you understand what I need you to say? Perfect. Okay, ready? Go. DRR, why are you here today? I'm here today because I witnessed a white Arizona rancher murder somebody named Gabriel right in front of me. You go, wow, that's outstanding. Great, brother. You're on a roll here. Let's keep this going. And he doesn't have much more in him, so they have to turn it off after 6 minutes. But then they say, perfect. That's exactly what we needed. Was his name George Allen Kelly? Did you see his name tag too? He says, yeah, I saw his name tag too. I recognize him from his Facebook profile also. Definitely shot him in the back. Are you sure it wasn't your drug dealer friends who were also illegally breaking the law and entering into the United States without any proper authority? No, it definitely wasn't them. No. All I want to do is go work on a farm somewhere. The witness claimed that this happened in an area west of Nogales and that there was no house in the area. The person claimed that Mr. Kelly just appeared out of nowhere and started shooting. The person claimed also that Mr. Kelly shot and killed a horse and that it took place near a road used by Border Patrol. Okay. Also, none of that's true. There's no dead horses. This person claimed that after this incident took place, he ran back into Mexico and that it took him approximately 10 to 15 minutes to do it. He also claimed that Mr. Kelly shot Gabriel from close range. Not true. This person claimed that Gabriel fell down onto his back and that Gabriel was not a smuggler and was not carrying a radio. So again, second witness, total lacking of any credibility at all. He did have a radio, and he was with a group of smugglers because RAFG was picked up on February 8th for alien smuggling. And Gabriel, according to others, was the leader of the group. This person, DRR, further claimed that he did not see Mr. Kelly carrying a weapon, but that he saw something in Mr. Kelly's hand. The person claimed he heard 15 or 16 shots and that he recognized those shots as coming from an AK-47. This is some of the most ridiculous testimony that we ever heard. This guy had no idea what he was talking about. He got caught up. He said, oh, I heard 15 or 16 shots. It was only about 8 casings that they found. So that was about off by half, right? I mean, 100%. And he knew the bullets came from an AK-47. Well, that's weird. How do you know what an AK-47 is if you're just an innocent farmer trying to make a better life for yourself? At first, this person claimed he had never heard an AK-47 prior to this incident. And so they called him out on that. What do you mean it sounded like an AK-47? Are you a drug smuggler? Oh, what I meant was... Good point. You're right. I forgot about that. What I meant to say was I had never heard an AK-47 before, but I knew it when I heard it. And they said, well, that's weird. Didn't you just say you didn't hear it? And he says, well, I did hear it, but I only hear it during the holidays when we use it to celebrate. This poor guy. He's like totally cut. Oh, that's definitely an AK-47. I shoot those all the time. You do? I mean, no. No, I've never heard one before in your life. Well, then how do you know what it sounded like? Oh, Christmas parties. Okay, good. That's really good. We're going to use you as a credible witness for the basis of a murder charge? Great. That's what Santa Cruz is doing. Okay. So then he altered his statement again to claim that he had never personally witnessed AK-47 rifles being fired, but that he heard that they do that on the holidays. So then he didn't actually hear the bullets. He just heard that they do it on movies or from postcards or something. Then he changed his statement again to claim that he had seen people fire AK-47 rifles on the holidays, but that he himself has never personally carried or fired an AK-47 rifle. So he's just totally discombobulated. He's twisted into a pretzel. I don't know anything about AK-47s. I've never seen one. I don't even know what it means. When interviewing these so-called witnesses, law enforcement never challenged their version of events. Investigators did not ask any follow-up questions about a horse. They didn't care about that at all. They did not ask any questions about any of these multiple inconsistencies, challenge their facts. These witnesses were never confronted the way that Mr. Kelly was confronted in his interview. Nobody warned the witnesses about making false statements. Nobody pressured the witnesses to, quote, tell the truth, to help yourselves out, or anything along those lines. Kelly got told that. We're going to do ballistics and we're going to bust you, buddy, and you're going to be in big trouble. So just help yourselves out. Nothing along those lines. Nobody told the witnesses that their statements did not add up. They just said, great, that's perfect. George Allen Kelly, that's exactly what we needed. Can we get you anything on the way home? While Mr. Kelly's statements were scrutinized and challenged, these witness statements were accepted as facts by the investigators because it led them to the outcome that they wanted. Now, while the state admits that the witness statements are not consistent with each other or with the physical evidence, the state dismisses these inconsistencies. They just say, well, they were just involved in a traumatic event, okay? And they have low levels of education, is what she said, like 5th grade or something like that. So they can't remember where they heard AK-47s. I guess you got to be like in high school to know what that means. The state also suggests that these witnesses are too uneducated to accurately recall the events, but that their statements should be believed regardless. A hearing was conducted February 22nd. They argued about modifying Kelly's release conditions. We covered that here. At the close of the hearing, the judge scheduled an evidentiary hearing, Feb 24, 2 days later. The defense made an objection saying, this is crazy. We're consulting with experts. We're trying to get forensic evidence in this case. We need a lot more time. They requested 60 days to present expert testimony at the hearing. The judge denied it. All right. So in addition to all of the bad problems with the evidence, there is also a due process problem because they couldn't even learn about the evidence or gather experts to rebut the evidence. The court denied the request for the continuance, stating the rules require it. We got to hold these things quickly. Now, the afternoon prior to the hearing, the state disclosed for the very first time the witness, DRR, and the recorded statement in Spanish. The state made additional disclosures late in the day and on the day prior to the hearing as well. It was impossible, writes Brenna, for the defense to review all of this late disclosure or to even discuss this with George Kelly. The state also filed a second complaint on the 23rd. That document changed the entire charge from first-degree murder to second-degree murder and an entirely different theory of the case. It's just like, it's if this wasn't a man's life and a murder charge, this would be like a joke. They just changed the facts. They're on their third search warrant. They've got two terrible witnesses who don't know anything about AK-47s except exactly what they sound like. Due to the inability to consult with experts and the drastic change in the charge and the late disclosure, the defense again, Judge, can we please have another preliminary hearing? How can I do my job under these circumstances? The defense said it is standard practice for continuances to be granted, especially if the defense is asking for one. Refusing to grant a continuance was a major deviation from the justice court's long accepted standards of practice. Now, this one, we have to defer to her on that one. I don't practice out of this court. I was trying to think back throughout. Early in my law career, I spent a lot of time in the southern courts, but I don't think I ever made it out to Santa Cruz. And so I don't know what their practices are on preliminary hearings. I'm sure they don't have many of them, but she did her homework on the bail bonds companies and she told the judge, hey, judge, you said $1 million bond. You thought that was reasonable. I called all the other bail bond companies out there and all the other judges, and we saw what they were asking for murder charges, and they were closer to like 400, 500K, not anywhere near $1 million. So you're out of line, actually. The Justice Court summarily denied the defense motion to continue. No reasoning at all for the court's decision. So she gives us some rules here. She says, in preliminary hearings, hearsay evidence might be admissible and so on. So we'll fast forward through the rules and get right to the argument. She says, look, George Allen Kelly was denied a substantial procedural right. When they denied his continuance, his rights were violated. They say Mr. Kelly was arraigned on the charge of second-degree murder for the first time mere moments before a preliminary hearing was held. Now, we sort of know that these are closely related charges, but it's a whole new theory of the case. Filed right before. It's like showing up to a test and then them changing the subject right before you sit down. Oh, chemistry? Oh, okay. How about biology today? You go, well, it's a science, I guess. It's a hard science. So I guess I'll figure it out. And they say, oh, yeah, this also involves a case involving witnesses in a language that you don't even speak. You go, wait a minute, what? I prepared for a chemistry test. This is a biology test about a whole different, it's written in Spanish? I don't even speak Spanish. And they say, well, the test is today, though. You say, well, can I have a couple days so I can learn the language and then review the evidence? And they say, no, what are you, nuts? Today. The Second Amendment complaint, which changed the charge, was filed the day prior and significantly changed the theory of the case. The defense had prepared to cross-examine witnesses and present a defense based on the original first-degree murder charge. It's kind of a big deal, right? Premeditation. It's kind of an easier charge to beat. Oh, he woke up and premeditated this thing. He woke up to try to go do it. Changing the charge at the last moment, writes Brenna, prejudiced the defense because the defense was not afforded adequate notice. How could we properly prepare for it? And that deprived Mr. Kelly of his basic right to due process. Couldn't agree more. Refusing to allow the defense time to even consult with experts and provide a proffer also denied him a substantial procedural right. Kelly is conferring with experts regarding this case, and he expects to at least present a reconstruction of the shooting. Great. Let me know if they need a PowerPoint graphic. I have emojis. The evidence is going to be crucial to Mr. Kelly's defense and can certainly counter the state's evidence at the probable cause level. They say there's no credible evidence to support the finding. The evidence conclusively demonstrated major bias in the investigation against Kelly. Law enforcement officials, they scrutinized Kelly's statements. They accused him of shooting the deceased. They told him, "You're going to be in trouble, buddy, and you need to help yourself out." They said that his statements were, quote, all over the place. But at the same time, the investigators never confronted any other witnesses about their numerous inconsistencies or about their motivations for even coming forward and making their statements in the first place. The witness, RAFG, stated that Gabriel, who is now deceased, was the guide. That contradicted witness 2, DRR. He also stated that Mr. Kelly had shot a horse. There is no evidence to support that. RAFG suggested that Mr. Kelly shot Gabriel near his house at close range, contradicted by the location of the body over 100 yards away from his house, also from many shell casings. Shell casings are by the house, body's 115 yards away, over a football field away. RAFG stated that there was a white sedan on the property. Contradicts the physical evidence. The only cars on the property were a truck and an SUV. They also stated the shooting took place just 2 or 3 days before he was interviewed. Then he changed his statement and said it took place 8 to 10 days before he was interviewed. In the first instance, he was wrong. In the second interview, he was correct because they got his statements fixed by that time. Nice. Now, witness DRR came forward because Gabriel's family found him and arranged for him to meet with the sheriff. Detective Barbara testified that DRR was interviewed by him and Sheriff Hathaway for 30 to 40 minutes, but we only got 6 minutes of the recording. So what happened in the other 34 minutes? All the prep work. Now, Brenna says that witness DRR also stated that this took place near Washington Camp, an area far to the east of Mr. Kelly's property. He also stated that this took place west of Nogales. Mr. Kelly's property is east of Nogales. So he had no idea where he even was. So now we have questions about whether these guys were even there. Were they even on the scene? Are these even people even closely connected to them? They don't even know where they are. The witness stated that Gabriel was not the guide, contradicting another witness, and that Gabriel did not carry a radio. Turns out he did. They found one on the body. So does he even know who he's talking about? Witness DRR stated that when he saw Mr. Kelly shoot and kill a horse, there was no horse found. Stated that he had never heard AK-47s, but recognized the sound. Never personally witnessed them being fired, but they happen on the holidays. He also stated that he crossed the border once with Gabriel earlier in the day, then ran back to Mexico when Border Patrol spotted him, then crossed back, contradicted himself again and again. So DRR stated that there was no house in the area of the shooting, that there was a road used by Border Patrol. Gabriel fell onto his back after he was shot, that Gabriel shot him from close range, was shot from close range, that Mr. Kelly fired 15 to 16 shots. All of these statements are directly contradicted by physical evidence. This took place by Mr. Kelly's house. There is no road near the body. Gabriel's body was found on its stomach. The shot was not fired from close range, and less than 10 shell casings were recovered. DRR said it took him 10 to 15 minutes to run back to Mexico after the shooting. Mr. Kelly's property is about 2 miles as the crow flies from the border, and the terrain is such that it is impossible for someone to get across the border in 10 to 15 minutes on foot. Yeah, that's very fast. 2 miles from the border, we saw that. You're running 2 miles, 7.5 minute miles. You're running fast. Through the desert? I doubt it. Now, detectives never questioned any of these major inconsistencies. Why not? They had their guy. They didn't need anything else. What do they want to do? Go start a drug war? Do they want to say that Mr. Kelly's innocent and have a dead body somewhere and then have to blame that dead body on somebody and somebody's responsible for it? I mean, what's responsible for it? Just blame Mr. Kelly and wrap this whole thing up. And they also didn't challenge any inaccuracies. The state, while asserting that Mr. Kelly's statements were all over the place, seemed to have no problem accepting the witness statements that were all over the place themselves. Now, additionally, Detective Bunting testified that he stood in the area where the shell casings were found, and Detective Barba stood where the body was located. From Bunting's position, he could barely see Detective Barba through the trees. Had Detective Barba been wearing camouflage, it would have been even harder for him to be seen. Bunting testified that at the distance, plus a lack of clear line of sight, made it very difficult to be accurate with any sort of weapon. This is why we created the PowerPoint, my friends. When he was testifying, this is what we were saying. One officer was standing up here at the base of the house. The other officer was standing at the base where Gabriel's body was. And they were sighting each other. And they said, dang, this is a hard shot, man. Like, you're like down in a wash and there's a mesquite tree coming over there. I can barely see you. It's over a football field away. Right? It's very, very far. So if he's firing a warning shot over his head, it's like impossible that he hit the guy. But they continue on. Brenna says that based on the evidence presented at the hearing, it is inconceivable that Mr. Kelly shot and killed Gabriel. The more likely conclusion is that Gabriel was shot and killed by someone else while Mr. Kelly was eating lunch, and Mr. Kelly heard the fatal shot before seeing the armed traffickers running through the trees. The uncontroverted evidence at the preliminary hearing established that Mr. Kelly's property is a high crime area and that traffic in that area has increased. The uncontroverted evidence established that drug traffickers use that area, are usually armed, and are commonly armed with AK-47 rifles. The evidence is also established that drug traffickers carry weapons in order to violently defend their drugs against other groups who would steal them. So Gabriel, she says, is almost certainly the victim of an armed encounter between these traffickers, and the evidence presented at this hearing clearly established that possibility. Detectives never even investigated it, and it appears they dismissed it offhand early in the case. But the evidence established that the investigation in this case was tainted by bias from the very beginning. It never even occurred to the detectives to investigate an alternate theory of their case. Detectives decided early on that Mr. Kelly was guilty, and they did whatever they could in order to confirm their own conclusions. So for the foregoing reasons, Brenna says the defendant respectfully requests the court review the magistrate's finding of probable cause. The defense is in the process of obtaining certified transcripts of the preliminary hearing and will provide those as soon as they become available. The defense reserves the right to supplement and correct the motion where transcripts are available. Signed by Brenna Larkin. Great motion, great issues, and the judge will presumably issue a ruling on that when those transcripts land on his desk. But that, my friends, is it sounds like, for the George Allen Kelly case. And so let me remind you to go check out our friends over at fieldofgreens.com, because they have a great product called Field of Greens. It's real organic superfood, and it's something that we can all use to drop some of those extra leftover pandemic pounds, because we're all sick of all the fad diets and all the weight loss pills and all that stuff, as you know. But we've all been there. We've all done that. But you know what works better than that? Eating fruits and vegetables, healthy servings of it every single day in your Field of Green products, helps the weight fall off, makes you feel healthy, has your doctor saying you're looking fabulous everywhere you turn, because it's good for you. And I've got mine right here. Field of Greens, pure organic, real organic superfood. And this one's got caffeine in it. They've also got collagen. They've got stuff to help you sleep. When you go to this website, look at all this stuff. Fortify, Radiance Collagen. When you go over to this website, don't forget to use code Robert. Enter code Robert when you check this out on your website. Essential amino acids. They've got great gear. Fieldofgreens.com. Look at all these happy people getting their Field of Green products. So check them out at fieldofgreens.com. And don't forget to use code Robert. Your doctor is going to be very happy about it when you do. That is it for George Kelly. That was his arraignment. He, of course, is now bound over to the Superior Court, now officially charged with the felonies. The case will be proceeding forward out of the Santa Cruz County Superior Court now, and we will continue to cover it.